The job posting was simple: Faye Deep, Jan Sea Salvage, Mariana Trench, experimental rig, high Jan risk, high Jan pay. Faye, the last two words were the only ones that mattered. My name's Riley. I'm a recovery specialist, which is a fancy way of saying I go into places people shouldn't be, find the things they left behind, and bring them back up. I used to be a geologist. The pay was worse. The company rep was a woman named Chen. We met in a prefab office on the deck of the support vessel, the air thick with the smell of diesel and ozone. She had the look of someone who hadn't slept in a week, her eyes holding a flat, polished sheen like dark glass. She slid a data Zen slate across the steel table. "The Faye Acheron Faye," she said. Her voice was low. "Clipped experimental deep Jan crust drilling platform. Went silent 14 days ago. Last transmission was garbled. We need the black box flight recorder, operational logs, the works." I scanned the schematics on the slate. The rig was a spidery, pressurized habitat designed to sit at 3,000 meters, right on the edge of the Hadal zone. It was tilted now, the report said, listing against a thermal vent field. Cause? I asked. Chen's gaze didn't waver. "Unknown, that's what the box will tell us." The fee was a number that made the back of my teeth ache. Enough to clear my debts. Enough to walk away from the deep for good. I nodded. She didn't smile. Instead, she leaned forward, her fingers tapping once, decisively, on the table. "There's one condition, Mr. Riley, the primary rule." I waited. There's always a rule. The black box records everything. Audio, internal comms, ambient. Do not listen to the recordings. Not a snippet, not a whisper. You retrieve the physical unit, you seal it in the shielded container we provide, and you do not open it until you are back on this deck. Is that clear? It wasn't the first time I'd been given a weird protocol. Corporate secrets, proprietary tech, things that could spook investors. I shrugged. "I'm paid to fetch, not to listen." "This is different," she said. And for a second, the exhaustion in her eyes broke through, showing something raw beneath fear. "You do not listen, not even out of curiosity. The container is shielded for a reason." Understood. She studied me for a long moment, then sat back, the moment gone. "Your team is prepped. You descend in 6 hours." Faye, my team was 2 people, Marcus and Lara. Marcus was ex-Jan Navy, built like a bulldozer, with a calm that was deeper than any ocean we'd worked. He was checking the seals on my atmospheric diving suit, his movements methodical. Sure, the suit was a second skin of ceramic alloy and biopolymer, a personal submarine that could handle the crushing, silent weight of 3 kilometers of water. Lara was our tech, all sharp angles and sharper curiosity, her fingers a blur over the holographic displays that monitored suit integrity, sonar, and comms. "Thermal readings from the vent field are chaotic," she said, her voice buzzing in my helmet's internal speaker. "The Faye Acheron Faye's sitting in a suit. External cameras are going to be useless. You'll be on LiDAR and suit lights." "Just like Manila," Marcus grunted, slapping the shoulder of my suit. It sounded like a bell. "Manila didn't have 3,000 meters of water on top of it," I replied. The launch was a controlled fall. The dive cage released, and the world shrank to the circle of light from my helmet, the steady green pulse of the LiDAR grid painting the void in wireframe. The pressure was a constant, familiar hug, the suit creaking and groaning in protest. The comms were silent, except for Lara's occasional status updates. Fate 2,000 meters, all green. Faye, then the seafloor resolved in the LiDAR, a jagged, alien landscape of black rock and towering chimneys belching superheated, mineral rich smoke, and there, canted at a 40-degree angle against one of the smaller vents, was the Phaeaceron. It looked like a dead insect. Its long, spindly legs were twisted, one buried in the seabed. The main habitat, a series of interconnected spheres, was dark. My light swept over it, catching the glitter of quartz in the rock, the dull gray of the alloy, no visible breach. That was the first wrong thing. Visual confirmation, I said, my voice too loud in the helmet. No obvious structural failure, proceeding to primary airlock. The manual override on the airlock door still had power. It hissed open, a cloud of silt billowing out. I stepped inside, the outer door sealing behind me. The interior lights flickered on, weak and yellow. The second wrong thing, the place wasn't flooded. It was dry, and it was intact. A coffee mug sat on a console, a dark ring of stain at the bottom. A jacket was slung over the back of a chair. A personal tablet, its screen dark, was pinned under a clipboard. It was arranged, lived in, as if the crew of 12 had just stepped out for a moment. "Lara, you getting this?" I whispered, feying it. No life signs. Atmosphere is stale but breathable, low oxygen. "Get the box and get out. Riley." I knew the layout from the schematics. The command sphere. The black box was housed behind a panel near the primary data core. I moved through the silent corridors, my boots leaving prints in the fine dust that had settled from the ventilation. The only sound was the rasp of my own breath and the faint, rhythmic thump of my suit's circulatory system. The panel came off easily. The black box was a simple, hardened cylinder, marked with a single red stripe. I pulled it free, the connectors releasing with a soft click. It was warm to the touch, even through my gloves. I slid it into the shielded container Chen had provided. Hearing the magnetic seal engage, with a definitive think rule followed. I was turning to leave when I heard it. A sound, not from the comms, from my suit's external audio pickups, amplified in the stillness. Fey tap, Fey a pause, Fey tap, then tap, Fey another, longer pause, Fey tap. Fey it was faint, muffled, metallic, coming from deeper in the habitat, down the central access shaft that led to the lower engineering spheres. It wasn't random, it was a pattern, a slow, deliberate rhythm, like someone knocking. From the inside out, "Lara," I said, my voice tight, "you picking up any acoustic anomalies? Ife negative? Just you? What's wrong?" Fei tapped in, closer now, or clearer. I stood frozen in the corridor, the shielded container heavy in my hand, staring into the dark maw of the access shaft. The crew's jackets and coffee mugs sat around me. The lights hummed. The knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It was a thick, listening silence. I realized I was holding my breath. "Nothing," I said, forcing air into my lungs. Retrieval complete, returning to the lock. I moved quickly, my light jerking across the walls. I didn't look back, not once. You learn that rule early in this job. You get what you came for, and you leave. Curiosity isn't a virtue down here. It's a weight that can drag you under. But all the way back to the airlock, through the cycling chamber, and out into the crushing, eternal dark, I could feel it, the memory of that sound. Fey tap, Fey tap, then tap, Fey like a fist on a door, waiting for a reply. Fey the support ship. The Phaeaceron Fey felt too bright, too loud. The air smelled of scorched coffee and stale sweat, a sharp contrast to the cold, filtered nothingness of the suit. I sat at the small mess table, The black box, a dented orange cylinder, resting between my hands like a live grenade. Chen's warning was a loop in my head. Faye didn't play it. Faye across from me. Lara was already hooking it up to her laptop, her fingers moving with a surgeon's precision. Her face was pale under the harsh fluorescence. Marcus leaned against the bulkhead by the sonar station, arms crossed, his eyes fixed on the dark porthole. He hadn't said a word since we cycled back in. "We have to know," I said, more to myself than anyone. My voice sounded raw. Lara nodded. "Once we do." She hit play. At first, it was normal, routine. The timestamp put it 3 hours before the Faye Ariadne Fady went silent. Faye pressure readings nominal. Hull integrity green. Faye a woman's voice. Bored. Phase saturation at 90.6%. Another 6 hours on this weld, and we can call it a shift. Faye fatal that to my knees. Faye a man grumbled laughter, tinny and distorted through the recorder. Then a new voice, younger, tighter, Faye captain, picking up an acoustic anomaly through the hull. Faye a pause. The hum of life support, Faye describe. Faye the captain's voice was calm, flat fades melodic, like a vibration, singing through the metal itself. Faye silence on the recording on the Faye Acheron. Faye we all stopped breathing. I could hear the faint, ever-present groan of our own ship's hull against the deep. Faye all non-Jan essential comms off, Faye the captain ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. Faye quiet on deck. Faye for 17 minutes. There was only the sound of breathing, the shallow, controlled breaths of people trying not to make a sound. And underneath it, just at the edge of the recording's range, a faint, rhythmic vibration, a low, resonant hum that seemed to phase in and out. It wasn't a machine. Machines don't breathe. Then the intercom crackled to life. A voice came through, clear and calm, devoid of any static. It wasn't the captain. It wasn't any of the crew we'd just heard. Fayette understands pressure. Faye the words hung in the dead air of the mess. Simple, declarative. On the recording, chaos erupted. A scream cut short by a sound of shearing metal, a long wrenching screech that made my teeth ache. Alarms wailed, a frantic, overlapping chorus. Someone was shouting, orders lost in the bedlam. A heavy, wet Faye thud. Faye shook the microphone. Then another, and another. And through it all, rising above the din, a new sound. A wet, rhythmic, sucking inhalation. Fish. Den whoosh. Shh. Den whoosh. Faye like something massive. Something with lungs the size of ballast tanks, breathing through a mouthful of water. It was slow, deliberate. It filled the space in the recording, swallowed the screams. Then, a final, deafening crunch of collapsing structural members. A hiss of escaping atmosphere, fading into a gurgle. Silence. The recording ended. The soft whir of Lara's laptop fan was the loudest thing in the world. My hands were clenched on the table, knuckles white. The taste of copper filled my mouth. I'd bitten my cheek. Lara was staring at her screen, her eyes wide behind her glasses. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, pulling up spectral analysis of the audio. The colorful graphs and waveforms looked obscenely cheerful. "The voice," she whispered. "The intercom voice. It has no source signature. It's clean, too clean, like it was generated inside the system." She swallowed hard. "And the breathing, the wet sound, Riley." She turned the screen toward me, on the graph. Superimposed over the chaotic noise of the disaster was a distinct, repeating biological signature. A complex waveform of deep, resonant frequencies and high-gen frequency fluidic pulses. "That's a laryngeal echo pattern," she said, her voice clinical, which made it worse. Modulated through a dense liquid medium, and these high Jan end pulses, they're consistent with sonar clicks, but biological, like a cetacean. Only nothing that makes a sound like that lives at 800 meters. Nothing we know. I looked at Marcus. He hadn't moved from the bulkhead, but his head was turned now, not toward us, but toward the main sonar display, mounted above his station. The screen showed the usual false-gen color landscape of the abyss below us, the jagged silhouette of the Faye Ariadne Faye resting on the slope, the cloud of silt we'd stirred up, and beneath it, in the profound black of the trench, a massive amorphous bloom of pale green. It was moving, not drifting with a current, moving with purpose, a slow, sinuous curl, like a limb unfurling. It was directly under us. It had been listening. Marcus finally spoke, his voice a dry rasp. It's ascending. The fish. Jan Hush Fi from the recording seemed to echo in the room. In the very metal of the hull, a memory of a sound. A promise. Chen was right. We never should have played it. Some things, once heard, you can't unjan here. They get inside the metal. They get inside your head, and they start knocking. Faye, the silence in the station's cramped rec room was heavier than the pressure outside. It was the kind of quiet that gets into your joints. Marcus stared at the frozen sonar image. The ghost and limb of pale green light curled beneath the Faye Ariadne. Lara had her arms crossed, knuckles white. I just felt numb. The sound was in my head now, a phantom pressure in my ears. Fish, Jan whoosh. Chen broke it. He didn't look at the screen. He looked at his hands, folded on the table. The playback was a miscalculation, he said, his voice flat. A necessary one. You needed to understand the context of the retrieval. Retrieval, Marcus echoed, the word tasting foul. The primary mission was never the black box, Chen continued. Methodical, like he was reading a budget report. It was a secondary objective. The primary is a sample canister, titanium alloy, sealed under nitrogen. It was in the Deep Jan C Genetics lab on C-Jan deck. It contains tissue samples recovered from the hull breach that occurred 70 Jan 2 hours before the Faye Ariadne Faye went silent. Lara shifted. Tissue from what? From the thing that made that noise, Chen said, finally looking up. His eyes were tired. Or something adjacent to it. The company wants it. Badly. The pay for the crew. It triples upon successful recovery. The number he named hung in the air, a tangible thing. It was a stupid, life-gen-altering number. It was the exact sum, down to the last digit, that would clear the medical debt from my father's 3-Jan-year losing battle with the thing that ate him from the inside. The hospital bills were a ghost that sat at my kitchen table every morning. This number was an exorcism. I saw the same calculation flicker behind Lara's eyes. Marcus just looked sick. Triples, I said, my voice sounding distant. For a canister. For conclusive biological data from a previously undocumented Haddle Zone organism, Chen corrected. Clinical. The black box was the cover story. This is the real job. We go back down. We go to C-Jan deck. We get the canister. Nobody said no. You don't say no to a number like that. Not when your ghosts have itemized invoices. Faye the Second Descent was different. The dark outside the viewport felt attentive. The Faye Ariadne Faye's silhouette grew below us, not as a wreck, but as a carcass we were picking at. We didn't speak. The only sounds were the creak of the submersible's joints and the steady, artificial breath of the CO scrubbers. We landed softer this time, on the starboard side, near a service airlock that led directly to the mid-Jan decks. Lara guided the manipulator arm with a surgeon's precision. The outer hatch groaned open, a cloud of silt billowing out like the rig was exhaling. The water inside was clear, cold, and utterly black. My headlamp cut a shaky beam through the gloom as I pushed in first. The corridor was a mess of fallen ceiling panels and coiled wiring, but intact. No bodies this time. The silence was a physical thing, a wool packed in my ears. We moved in a tight formation, lights dancing over closed cabin doors, their portholes dark. C-Gen deck was the research level. The lab door was a reinforced hatch, slightly ajar. Marcus put a shoulder to it and it gave with a metallic shriek that made us all freeze. The lab was a time capsule. Expensive spectrometers and gene sequencers sat on bolted jan-down tables, dormant. But the walls were wrong. They were covered in growths, not rust or barnacles. These were spiraling fractal patterns raised from the metal like keloid scars. They were a dull gray in the beam of my light, but as I moved, a faint bioluminescent blue pulsed deep within their structure. A slow, lazy heartbeat. It wasn't light you could look directly at. It was light you felt in the back of your teeth, a cold chemical thrum. Jesus, Lara whispered, her breath fogging her faceplate. The central sampling table was there, and on it, the canister titanium. Just as Chen described, its seal was a complex locking mechanism, now pried open like a stubborn oyster. The lid hung by a hinge. Inside was a nest of sterile padding. Empty, a hollow feeling opened up in my gut, colder than the water. Lara stepped forward, her light sweeping the floor. There, she said. Around the base of the table was a residue, a translucent, sticky jan-looking substance like spilled glycerin. It pooled in a strange, non-Zan circular pattern. I crouched, bringing my light close. The stuff didn't just sit there. Where the beam hit it directly, it fey-moved fey, a slow, viscous creep, a millimeter upward against the pull of gravity, as if reaching for the light itself. I snapped my light away. It settled back down. Drag marks, Marcus said, his voice tight. He was pointing his beam at the deck plating, 2 parallel grooves, faint scored into the metal. They led away from the table across the lab and terminated at a small square maintenance access hatch in the far wall. The hatch was open, a black rectangle leading into the ship's innards. That's when the tapping started. It wasn't from outside the hull. It was inside the lab, inside the walls. Fey tap, gen tap, gen tap, tap, tap. Fey 3 quick, 2 slow, a deliberate rhythm. It came from the vent above the empty canister. Then it stopped, a moment of perfect, ringing silence. Then it started again, from a different direction, behind a wall panel near the open maintenance shaft. Fey tap, gen tap, gen tap, tap, tap. Fey, it wasn't the frantic, searching knock from the first dive. This was measured, insistent, like a code. My eyes met Lara's through our faceplates. The same realization was there, chilling us both. It wasn't trying to get in anymore. It was showing us where to go. Fey, the maintenance shaft was a tight, ribbed tunnel of rust and shadow. Our helmet lights cut through the gloom, painting the walls in stark, moving stripes. The tapping led us deeper, a steady, maddening metronome. Fey tap, gen tap, gen tap. Tap, tap, Fey, it echoed, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Pressure's stable, Marcus's voice crackled in my ear, a thin thread of normalcy. But the structural readings, they're all wrong. This whole section is breathing. I knew what he meant. The metal around us groaned and sighed with the ocean's weight, a living, aching sound. My father's voice was a ghost in my head. Faith of Sea has a memory, son. It remembers every ship it's taken. Fey, we rounded a bend, and the shaft opened into a wider junction. And there they were, the Fay-Acheron's Fay missing crew. 3 of them, at least. They were slumped against the curved wall, still in their emergency suits. But the suits weren't suits anymore. They were part of them. The same blued and veined growths we'd seen on the hull had erupted from tears in the fabric, weaving through the material and into the flesh beneath. It was a grotesque fusion, man and mushroom and metal. Their skin was waxed and paper thin, stretched taut over bones. You could see the outlines of their skulls, the hollows of their eye sockets, and beneath that translucent skin, a network of veins pulsed with a soft, cold blue light. It moved, a slow, viscous flow. God, Lara breathed, the word a static, Dan-laden whisper. They were preserved, not rotted, not eaten by scavengers, just changed. Held in a terrible stasis by the thing that had grown into them. Then one of them moved, the one on the left. Its head lolled to the side, and a gloved hand. The glove split open, fingers fused into knotted, woody claws lifted. It didn't reach for us. It didn't seem to see us at all. The clawed hand rose and fell, tapping slowly against a protruding pipe valve. Fay tap, Dan tap, Dan tap, tap, Fay the same rhythm. It's not random, Lara said, her voice suddenly sharp. Clinical. She was leaning forward, her helmet light fixed on the tapping hand. Listen, 3 short, 2 long. Again, 3 short, 2 long. Morse. My blood went cold. I'd done the basic offshore survival course. Everyone had DATA letters. Lara was muttering, translating under her breath, as the dead man's hand kept up its slow, mechanical beat. P-R-E-S-S-U-R-E. The hand paused, then started a new sequence. R-E-M-E-M-B-E-R-S. Fay pressure remembers. Fay the hand fell limp, slapping against the pipe with a final, wet thud. The blue light in its veins dimmed, then flared once, bright enough to cast our shadows sharp against the wall before settling back into its slow pulse. Source, Marcus said, his voice tight. He wasn't looking at the bodies. His light was tracing the walls, the ceiling, the floor. The growth is thickest here. It's feeding from something. He moved past the frozen crew toward the rear of the junction. Here. It was a tear in the hull, not a clean rupture from pressure or impact. This looked organic, a jagged, starred and shaped wound in the steel, about the size of a manhole cover. The edges were curled outward, like petals, or like something had pushed its way Fay from the outside, or forced its way Fay from within. The blue growths radiated from it in thick, ropey strands, covering the walls, the floor, climbing over the dead crew. Don't touch it, I said, but it was too late. The substance on the floor, which we thought was just a slick, began to move. It wasn't liquid, it was a carpet of fine, hair-like filaments. And as we stood there, our lights on it, it reacted. The filaments lifted, questing upward, reaching for our boots. They climbed the thick rubber with a slow, relentless certainty, a blue, tinged frost spreading across the surface. Back up, I barked, stumbling backward. The stuff on my boots clung, stretching into sticky threads. Lara and Marcus retreated, but Lara's left boot was already coated to the ankle. She scraped it against a pipe, but the substance just smeared, glowing brighter. Fay the ocean doesn't care, Fay my father said. Clear as day, Fay it just is. You either get out of its way, or you become part of it. Fay I looked at the fused crew, their eternal tapping. I looked at the hungry tear in the hull. I looked at the threads now creeping up my own suit. We weren't getting out of its way. Marcus, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. The shaped charges from the salvage kit. He understood instantly. This whole junction could bring the whole deck down on us. It's going to get out, I said, nodding at the tier. It's just using this place to grow. Then it's going to find a new pressure to remember. Lara was still trying to scrape the stuff off. It was climbing faster now, up to her calf. Do it, she said, her eyes wide behind her faceplate. Marcus worked fast, pulling 2 small brick, gen-like charges from his thigh pouch. He slapped them onto the central support column of the junction, right where the growths were thickest. 30 gen second timer, run now. We ran, back down the ribbed shaft, our lights jerking wildly. The tapping didn't follow us. The silence that did was worse. I counted in my head. 20. The shaft seemed to narrow. 15. A low groan vibrated through the metal. 10. We reached the lab, burst through the hatch. 5. Go, 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 Marcus yelled, shoving Lara toward the open water lock. The explosion wasn't loud. It was a deep, visceral Fey thump, Fey that traveled through the deck plates and up into my bones. Then the sound of rending metal, a scream of tortured steel. The corridor behind us collapsed in a cloud of sediment and swirling blue fragments. We hit the open water, kicking hard for the ascent line. I glanced back. A huge section of the Fey Acheron's Fey mid-gen deck was folding in on itself, imploding in slow motion under the immense pressure. We reached the bell, hauled ourselves in, sealing the hatch. The clang of the lock was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. We slumped against the wall, gasping in the canned air. That's when I saw it. On Lara's suit, from the knee down, the material wasn't black neoprene anymore. It was crusted with a hard, crystalline blue sheath. It pulsed faintly, in time with her rapid breathing. She followed my gaze, her own eyes dropping to her leg. She didn't scream. She just stared, her face pale under the dome light. The substance hadn't died in the collapse. It had come with us. It was remembering the pressure inside the bell. Fey, the surface air tasted thin and wrong after the trench, too clean, like it had been scrubbed of everything real. I stood on the deck, the sun a pale, watery eye overhead, and watched the containment team hustle Lara into the rig's smallest storage locker. It was the only place with a sealable door. She went without a fight, her movements slow, deliberate. The crystalline sheath wasn't just on her suit anymore. It had breached the seal at her wrist, crawling up her forearm in delicate branching filaments. It glowed with a soft, persistent blue light, like bioluminescence seen through deep ice. "It doesn't hurt," she said. Her voice muffled through the porthole glass Marcus had welded into the door. She held her arm up for me to see. The growth had formed patterns, not random crystallization. Fine, interlocking lines. Topography. It feels like remembering something you forgot. A song, a street name. Chen's cutter arrived an hour later, a sleek gray blade of a ship cutting through the sluggish swells. He came aboard with 4 of his people in crisp, unmarked environmental suits. Their movements were synchronized, efficient. They didn't look at the rig crew, they looked at the locker. "She comes with us," Chen said, his voice leaving no room for the ocean's whisper or the low groan of the rig. "Like hell," I said, stepping between him and the locker door. The memory of my father's voice was a stone in my gut. "Fey, you don't argue with the sea, you observe. You endure. Fey Riley, stand down." Chen's eyes were flat. "This is a level Fu Si biological contaminant. We have a facility." "She's not a contaminant. She's my diver. Look at her arm." I did. The patterns had deepened, grown more intricate. Lara pressed her palm against the glass from inside, spreading her fingers. The blue filaments traced a perfect, hauntingly familiar coastline. Then another, and another stacked like layers of a ghostly chart. My breath hitched. I knew those bathymetric lines. The Mariana Trench off Guam, the Kermadec Trench, the Puerto Rico Trench, every deep dive site I'd ever logged. And then, at the center of her palm, a sharp, precise rendering of a trench system that didn't exist on any public map. A site designated Fe Kaleidos Futsi Fe Classified. My last job for Chen, 2 years back, the one with the seismic anomaly that ate 3 drones. She's mapping you, Chen said, his voice low. It's a recorder, a living sonar log. Behind me, I heard the low thrum of the Faye Marlin's Faye engines powering up. Marcus, he was prepping the ship, his way of voting get clear. Now I turned on Chen. What was the rig really drilling for? He didn't answer. His people shifted their weight hands drifting toward equipment belts. The Faye Acheron Faye wasn't built for standard extraction. I pushed. The pieces clicking into a terrible picture. The pump array was all wrong. Too much pressure, not enough volume. You weren't pulling anything out. I took a step closer, the salt-encrusted deck grating under my boots. You were pumping something Fei. Chen's mask of control cracked, just a hairline fracture, a tick in his jaw. He glanced at the locker, at Lara's illuminated arm pressed against the glass. Nutrients, he said. The word barely audible over the wind, pressurized. Targeted nutrient slurry into specific hydrothermal vent networks along the trench floor. Why? We found something down there dormant. Not fossil, not rock. Something that metabolizes geological time, communicates through pressure differentials, acoustic shadows. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of the fear he must have been carrying for years. The Faye Acheron Faye was an alarm clock. We were trying to wake it up gently, study it. And the Faye Acheron's Faye implosion, Lara? My voice was flat, dead. A full-gen system activation pulse, he whispered. It's awake, and it's aware of the disturbance, aware of Faye's Faye. A scream of static erupted from the rig's comms shack, followed by a frantic shout. Sonar, multiple contacts, deep water, rising fast. We all froze. Chen's team broke for the control room, their clinical calm shattered. I followed, my blood turning to cold slurry. The sonar screen was a chaos of green light, dozens of contacts, maybe hundreds, spiraling up from the absolute black of the trench. They weren't moving like whales or submarines. They moved in perfect, silent unison, a school of something vast and coordinated. The computer traced their ascent path, overlaying a dashed red line. It was a mirror image, our dive profile from this morning. Every turn Lara and I had made in the DSV, every depth change, played back in reverse by these rising shadows. The ocean didn't care, my father said. I watched the screen, the glowing contacts rising faster now, eating the depth markers. The hair on my arm stood up. That wasn't quite right. The ocean remembers. And on the sonar, the leading edge of the school pulsed once, a bright echo. It was coming to collect.